All right. Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Yeah, I see it. Yes.
So excited to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Definitely needed at this time frame. Excellent.
I'm so glad I get to have these.
Yes, I'm so glad that we get to have these conversations as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Affirming Positive Representation Beyond Black History Month with Dr. Angela Searcy. My name is Raven Griffin. I'm the marketing manager here at Kaplan Early Learning Company. Thank you for joining us for a fascinating discussion on the topic of why Black history should be incorporated in early learning beyond February, how to do so, and how Black history and diversity, equity, and inclusion, along with empathy and advocacy for positive change, go hand in hand. At Kaplan Early Learning Company, we stand united with Black educators, children, families, communities, and team members in advancing equity out of love and empathy. We are committed to supporting social justice, investing in diversity and inclusion efforts, and advocating and providing equitable learning opportunities for team members in early learning communities. This is one reason why discussions such as this one we are having today is not only important, it is necessary and will be ongoing. So before we get started, I would like to introduce our phenomenal speaker, Dr. Angela Searcy. Dr. Angela Searcy is an educational consultant and seminar leader at Erickson Institute and the owner and founder of Simple Solutions Educational Services, a professional development company. She holds a BA in English and Secondary Education, an MS in Early Childhood Development from Erickson Institute, and a doctorate in education. Her research revolves around brain-based learning as assessed by the Classroom Assessment Scoring System, or CLASS, and its correlation to aggressive behaviors in Head Start preschool classrooms. An educator since 1990, Dr. Searcy has experience as a teacher at all levels of education and as a development therapist through the Early Intervention System of Illinois. Dr. Searcy is also an adjunct professor at Erickson Institute, a professional development provider for Teaching Strategies, LLC, and the Bureau of Education and Research, an affiliate trainer for Teachstone. She is also the author of Push Past It, a positive approach to challenging classroom behaviors, and one of the brilliant influencers behind our Walk in My Shoes Mat activity guide, both available at Kaplan Early Learning Company. A former neurodevelopmental specialist, Dr. Searcy has specialized training in neuroscience and is a candidate in Erickson Institute's Infant Mental Health Certificate Program. Everyone, I would like to welcome Dr. Angela Searcy.
Thank you so much, Raven. I am so just grateful and happy to have this great conversation with everyone. Our topic for today is just really affirming, right, young children and Black children, Black History Month beyond February. So let's just talk about Black History Month. And I want you to kind of think of, several R's as we think about Black History Month. So the first thing I want to mention is that Black History Month is intended to be a review and showcase what you did all year long. Yes. So Black History Month shouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to take out everything and do it this month. It really is that time to review and celebrate what you've done all year. So how do you showcase? Well, the first thing is make sure that we're doing it all. Journals, portfolios, art, music, food, families, of Black families and Black history, and infuse and integrate that in our daily experiences. So you might be thinking, well, what does that look like for an infant or toddler? Well, infant or toddler, we are using, I love to bring out rich, literature. And what a great book with, Whose Knees Are These? Where are we talking with infants and toddlers just about, that color, black color, where we talk about brown and cinnamon and, saying, yes, they're, talking about hair color, talking about physical attributes is a great way to begin that discussion. Then we're going to move into more deep discussions with young children about what kind of foods a family can eat. How is that different from your family? Talking about history. And when we talk about history for very young children, we just say something like, many years ago, or, way back when. We don't have to talk about dates or anything like that. And I always just try to show easy entryways into this discussion, which is one of them is Going Down Home with Daddy. And what a great book for young children. You can, with your books, you can kind of decide what pages you want to read. I usually put paper clips in my favorite pages if I don't want to read the whole book. Yes, because young children don't know if you skipped any pages. And this is a great book with lovely illustrations. Where you're talking about it with a 3-year-old, they may look at one page, but an 8-year-old may eat up all the pages and then even want to know more. So Black history is not something that just occurs in February. That wouldn't be enough time to talk about the rich culture, language, music, clothes, hair, skin that's a part of the Black community. And so a couple of things you want to think about is, how do I do this? Well, we talked about journals and food and activities. You can say something, for example, that talks about history, like, this little girl named Ruby Bridges, she, went to kindergarten on this day, and you'll be going to kindergarten on this day. So make it very simplistic, easy to understand language for young children. Holidays are another way that you can talk about Black history all year round. So you can talk about holidays that, that is a part of Black history, a part of Black culture. And so some people feel like holidays can be really tricky. We've had this discussion before. And holidays are something you share. So you can approach a holiday as something that you learn about, or something that you participate in. Maybe a child in your program wants to share their holiday with someone else, like Juneteenth, and they're like, what's Juneteenth? Well, let me share that with you. And letting the children and families decide how they want to share. If they want to observe and learn about Kwanzaa, or if they actually want to participate in Kwanzaa, or if they just want to observe someone. So it's observing a holiday, sharing a holiday with someone. So whatever way someone can participate within a holiday means that there's no mandatory. It's however you wish to engage and learn. And asking families and asking children what ways they want to learn. So thinking about sharing as opposed to necessarily, participating or celebrating. Asking is a huge piece of this. Dr. King holiday, we just celebrated this. And so we want to honor Dr. King all 365 days, not just one. So one example is having a peace table. A peace table in a preschool classroom. Wow, what a great addition. Or having peace helpers, or having children wear peaceful, glasses to look around and see who's being peaceful and engaging in peaceful, interactions with another child. That can happen in preschool, where this is continuing and we're celebrating all year. And so you want to take those pictures of your peace helpers. And during Black History Month, you may showcase those pictures on a bulletin board. You might make a video. You might make a PowerPoint of things that have happened all year. So another question that came from a teacher, well, wow, this is so interesting. Should we have a presentation? Should we dress up, as people, Black people from history? Well, be cautious. So the best thing to do is to ask, to learn, to talk with families in your program, to get that engagement, but be cautious because we want to think about the history behind something or the context. So if a child was not a Black child, I don't know if I would necessarily have them dress up as Madam C.J. Walker, but they could learn about Madam C.J. Walker. And if they want to be a hairdresser, they could dress up as a hairdresser. But I don't know if we necessarily want them to dress up as Madam C.J. Walker, just because there's a history behind dressing up, as you have to look at the culture and the context behind that. And you just want to make sure it doesn't make someone feel uncomfortable. And we want to actually celebrate what the children are learning from that. So that can kind of take away from the children and their experience and their learning and what they're going to take away from Madam C.J. Walker and how they're going to carry her legacy forward in their own way, if that makes sense. So we want to think about how we are embodying, right? We don't need to dress up as someone to embody their spirit. And that's the piece that we want to carry on with very young children, that yes, we want to embody that. And how are we doing that every day? So we talked about review, right? Black History Month should be a review of what we've done all month. And if you're thinking that's not how we did it, it's okay. We're always learning, right, from each other. So in addition to review, we want to take Black History Month and reflect. So reflect on, what are the materials within my classroom? What are the materials that I have at home? Are they reflective of a variety of the different experiences that Black people have? So here's an example of a book called Hands Up. And it's a celebration. Reflect to see that the materials, the literature, the discussions that you have about Black history aren't always stories of pain. Even though stories of pain are a part of our culture, it's not the only part of our culture. So you can put your hands up and dance, and you can put your hands up and cheer. And Hands Up is a great book that helps us to think about just our everyday lives and interactions. Or this is another book called Saturday. And I love to share my book titles because it's an easy way to engage within conversations. And Saturday is a little girl in her Saturday with her mom, and how we could just enter in this conversation in many different ways. Another book that I wanted to share with you is Marisol Doesn't Match. And Marisol is Peruvian, and she is biracial, and they're Afro-Peruvians. So they're Black people that speak Spanish, and there are Black people that speak a variety of languages. And sometimes young children are a little confused by that, and helping them to open that door and have those discussions. So as you do a review, make sure that your stories, discussions, activities about the Black culture are not monolithic. We have a rich culture, and we are, think about intersectionality and think about how cultures intersect together. So make sure as you review your discussions, your activities, embrace the diversity within our culture. Okay. Another book, yes, I'm showing you a lot of titles. I hope that you're writing these down. I'm just going to keep on going. Is that another book that I love is The Patchwork Bike. The Patchwork Bike takes place in a desert. And it actually, if you look here, I'm going to turn to some of the pages. A village that is it's in a desert. Let me see here. Go here and kind of peek through. Oh yes, No Go Desert is the name. I had to get it right. This is the village where they live in our mud for walls home. And another completely different view of the Black culture and how we're from different places and thinking about how to share this example with young children. So before we've talked about windows and we talked about mirrors, and windows open a window to different cultures and experiences, and then mirrors just show back and reflect back. So we want to have that mix of both. And then we also want to include our sliding glass doors. I don't know if we've ever talked about sliding glass doors, which, how can I enter into an experience? So a sliding glass door can be, a book that looks at, let me just kind of share this from our series, about affirming young girls. And this is a great book, Parker Looks Up. And what a great sliding glass door book, where it thinks about all the aspirations that young children can have, and who they can look up to, and whose world they can step into as a child. And this is another great book that has these beautiful illustrations. And as you look at these books, you are in charge, and you can decide what parts of the book you want to share. If you just want to share, one book and just share little pieces of it over a week, or revisit the book many times, you can get it. There's no way to get this wrong. So don't worry. Often as we talk about how do I approach, different cultures, people feel nervous. And that's okay. That as you think about how to review something, you can be in charge. There are some key things to think about as you do your review. So make sure that you have a variety of books. We talked about windows, mirrors, sliding glass doors. Think about lives or experiences that you don't see or that you're wondering about. Be careful to make sure that the characters within the books, that the Black character is not the sidekick, that they're a main character in the story. That's really important. There's some research to show that, many main characters are not Black children, and that it's really common for Black children to see characters. It's more typical for them to see a character that's an animal than it is for them to see someone that reflects them. Right? So we want to make sure that as we look at those things as we have our review, think about the author of the book. So looking at who is that person inside the culture. We know we can have windows within, but it's also important to have someone who's an author that's embedded within the culture. Look at the illustrations. Really look at, yes, we're going to review. And you can love books, right? And have wonderful memories and experiences with books, but then have a critical view of those books that maybe you even grew up with. And so we can have both. They can all come together, that you can love something, and then you can also think, I wonder if instead of reading this part, I'll read this part. Or as I describe and talk about this, I wonder what the children think, and asking, or the parents or the families think. So you can ask all those questions and have all those wonderings as well. Think about infusing I talked a lot about books, but there's also music and activities and dance, right? And food that's a part of our culture. So sharing lesson plans with other teachers, having, a Google Doc where you share throughout the entire year activities that kind of carry on and affirm that Black culture all year long. I've even had teachers just have a sharing board where they just kind of keep the board going throughout the year. All of those are great ways to affirm, to keep our learning happening throughout the entire school year. All right, so we talked about continuous learning and improvement, that we're all on this journey of learning together. So let's kind of delve in and talk about, what does that look like? Well, it could be, children looking in the mirror, at themselves. And talking about differences is absolutely okay. And talking about how we're the same. Talking about differences even within a culture. I did mention this, but I love this book, Bedtime Bonnet, which in one family, everyone has different ways of taking care of their hair and different hair textures. And, just looking at the differences within a culture, make sure that we're not showing one type of thing. So that's how you know that a book or literature or an activity could be stereotypical. So really delve in. If you don't know, kind of work with your team and think about how can we find out, more information. Music, right? And just, feeling good about yourself. Oh my gosh, I'm pulling out so many books that my earpiece is coming loose because I'm getting so excited. So just thinking about affirmation and positivity and thinking about how you can do this throughout the entire year long. So songs, music, dance, empowerment. Right, this is a book from the book collection for empowering young girls. And this is a book that you can read anytime. Understanding different experiences that could be coming up for Black children. And so this book, Not Quite Snow White. Wow, one book that I really wish that I had when I was a child. Let's explore this together. This is what young children are thinking and trying to figure out. And maybe some children just never noticed. So I talked to one of my friends and I was talking about some of my experiences that I never mentioned to her. And she just said, well, I wish you had told me, right? Or I would have been there to support you. So as adults, we are here to share those experiences. So a child could say, well, are you having this experience? And how does that make you feel? And how can I help you? And how can I be your ally as you go through your experience? And then I think that you'll be my ally back when I'm going through something. So we're building relationships, building community, and affirming throughout the entire year long. So I'm gonna kind of, this is one of my new favorites, which is The Undefeated. And I just even want to show you a little bit. Some people are, well, how do I do this with 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds? Just look at this beautiful illustrations and the simple words in simple language. The ones who survived America by any means necessary. And the ones who didn't. This is for the unflappable, the sophisticated ones who box adversity and tackle vision, who shine their light for the world to see and don't stop to the break of dawn. I'm just giving you a little taste of the undefeated, of those positive stories that we want to share all year long and keep reflecting them out to all children. All children need these stories because if they don't all have them, then children can have a misunderstanding of the world around them. And we always have that, remember, our mix of bringing in new ideas, giving those self-reflections, and being able to make sure children are noticing and understanding the world around them. And so just like we teach, numbers and shapes and letters, we also want children to have a cultural literacy and to have a deep understanding of themselves and to have a positive view of themselves with all these different activities. I do think that some teachers worry, well, is it okay if I talk about differences? As long as it's affirming, as long as it helps children to gain a positive identity of themselves and a positive identity, of those around them, and to see the rich culture that's in front of them and giving them that exposure. So I don't know if there's comments or questions about our discussion, but Raven, are you going to help me out and see if we have any comments or questions and anything that I haven't covered so far?
Absolutely. First and foremost, excellent job, Angela. We just thank you so much for your time and just you provided so many wonderful resources. We did post in the comments some of those resources that were mentioned in today's Facebook Live event, but also know that there are some that were not included in that comment section, but we want you to actively seek those because they're great conversation starters. So thank you so much for sharing these valuable resources with our viewers. And we do have some questions. They were sent to us directly, not specifically in the comments. So we do have a couple that I'll go through. One is specific to worksheets. So it is very common during Black History Month for teachers and parents to go ahead and encourage young minds to learn a Black history fact. And they may couple that with a worksheet. Why should we provide alternatives, or should we provide alternatives to Black History Month worksheets?
Okay, well, oh my gosh, what a great question. So I'm so happy that somebody was sharing. This is right on the pulse of what everyone's wondering about. And so, yeah, I would say that when we talk about very young children, they understand what's concrete in front of them. So then I've seen this where a teacher, well-intentioned during Black History Month, had babies coloring, Dr. King's face. And the babies were like, Daddy, they didn't really quite understand why they were using a brown crayon or who it was. So when we talk about very young children, we want to make it very concrete. We want to first talk about the things that they're noticing and they're discovering, and that is often attributes of people. It could be looking at pictures of someone and saying, that's a very smart man, or just saying, wow, this person was peaceful. Just like you sit with your baby and you may say, Grandma, or Papa, and you talk about their attributes or their accomplishments. Those things are very concrete, and you don't need a worksheet to do that. A child will gain so much more meaning from understanding about another culture by tasting food or something really concrete and hands-on. And that really continues, even for older children, to understand a fact without context doesn't mean much. So that context of like, well, who is this person? Who am I looking at? Is she like me or is he like me? And when did they live? And you could say some very general things about, well, they lived a long time ago, but I don't know if we need to necessarily recite facts without context and without meaning, because then that renders the learning meaningless and children won't remember something that doesn't have a meaning to it. So if you look at meaning as the adhesive that makes learning stick, then that will really be an alternative from a worksheet, that a worksheet is not going to have that strong meaning to it. And we want to make sure that we're making learning stick as much as possible through those hands-on activities.
I love that. Having a hands-on activity, having those meaningful interactions and conversations that just, like you said, stick with those young, impressionable minds a lot more than reciting a fact for 1 month. And then the next month and continuous months past that, it's not in their minds and it's not in their everyday lives of how to incorporate it into their learning and development. So thank you so much for answering that particular question. And you already kind of touched on my next question that I have from one of our viewers, but I'll go ahead and ask anyways, just so if you want to take the opportunity to explain it in more detail. So why should we critically assess the intent of representation within content shared with young learners via children's books or the movies, songs, and pictures, and consider the potential impact these representations can have on children?
Well, I think it's good to have a critical eye for anything that we share with very young children. It is very important for us to recognize, understand, because we don't want to share something and a child comes away with it with feeling. We talk about affirming young children, and we want to make sure that we're affirming positive identities. And I even mentioned in my example that there was no, for me personally, there was no African American Black princess. And I knew that. Just because someone didn't talk about it didn't mean I didn't know about it. I only picked up from people not talking about it, because they talked about everything else, was that it was not important, or that I shouldn't share my feelings. So then I was alone with my feelings without anyone not feeling. I noticed what things people talked about and what they didn't. So then when I noticed that it was a taboo subject, then I didn't share that, which meant I was alone, not knowing why there wasn't a princess that looked like me. And sometimes when you do it alone, children can come up with the wrong thought about why that exists. And I thought, well, I must not be important. And that's not what we want children to come away with. You can say something like, well, I did notice that. I noticed that, hey, saying that to children. Did you notice what I noticed? And you're like, and they could draw children's attention that didn't. Just like if you say, did you notice that shape? Kids were like, I don't know. And so kids were like, I did. So children will be at varying degrees at understanding and picking up on differences. But that doesn't mean that we don't draw their attention to something, because then it'll be like, oh, well, I thought it was like that because that person was bad, or I thought that because they weren't as important. We don't know. We want to make sure that we clear up any misconceptions, that we always look at, like, what could a child perceive here? What will that child come away with? And not saying something could be as powerful as saying something. And so as I go back to my own story and share that with you, I was left to think that I just wasn't important enough. And maybe that was wrong. I'm important, not a maybe. I am important. But children, and then I'm left with that to think about that alone. Where if somebody had asked me, I would have maybe said that. And you could say, oh, what? That's not what that means. It just, hey, let's start I think we have a good point here. Let's talk about this. Let's see how we can change this. Or talk about, how do you want to create your own princess? It could really be such a rich, powerful learning moment to critically look at things and say, I wonder how. We're always looking to improve. So I think that's the way to look at it. Like, how can I add to this? I think is a great way to think about it.
I love that. Thank you. Yes, I think to your point, we should be viewing everything from a critical eye, and especially looking at Black History Month and beyond. Yes, we're looking at these historical Black figures, but also they're not just figures. These were real people who impacted lives and society. And we're still seeing how those impacts are being realized today. And so with our next question and final question for today, I want to really hone in on how it connects Black History Month, affirmation, and DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. So how does Black History Month and diversity, equity, inclusion, along with empathy and advocacy for positive change, all go together hand in hand?
Yes.
Loaded question.
All help each other. Yes, absolutely. A great question. These are all great questions. Such a rich conversation is that they have a strong relationship with one another and they support each other. So as we talk about Black History Month is one month that we review everything that we've learned, and we're going to continue to do that each month. I think March, we talk about women. And so we're going to continue to do that and to develop. And then that's going to lead to us, as we talk about diversity and inclusion, that includes us making sure that we're noticing the attributes, the positivity, affirming other cultures, but at the same time recognizing and being careful and cautious to make sure that someone who has not been historically represented is, that they're like, hey, you're important too. And they're noticing now going forward, wait, something's missing. My teacher talked about this, or my parents talked about that. So then you have a child who's grown up with a critical eye. And then that's gonna, and they're allies to each other, that we're all supporting each other. And that's going to create this community, a strong community. That one, that we're celebrating differences, we're affirming positive attributes, and that we're also allies to one another. And that if we see an injustice, then we're going to be there to support you and care for you. And guess what? You're not alone. And even we could, and all of us could be a part of many cultures. so this actually makes for such a rich community, but also the different cultures that are within us as well, to recognize this. So I think that this is going to lead to having children grow up to have this kind of competence. And in many years, we'll look back and we'll say, wow, they're so smart that they don't feel uncomfortable having these conversations. And they're very culturally competent, which is going to make for a rich, work community going forward. So I hope that helps to explain and that we can be a part of many cultures. And yes, we can love something, but also be critical, and to put all of it kind of ties together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And one of the key takeaways from that particular answer that you gave that I think resonates with me and hopefully with our viewers is that we have a community, and within that community, there needs to be unity, not necessarily uniformity. So keeping that in mind, we should be looking out for one another and treating people how we want to be treated. And so with that, I want to say thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your resources. Thank you for your time. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Angela. Thank you for our viewers, to our viewers who are joining us today. So as I always say, let's continue this conversation by sharing this video with family, friends, and colleagues, sharing these wonderful books, tips, and resources with our children, and advocating for change within your homes, classrooms, and communities by advancing equity out of love and empathy. So again, I'm Raven Griffin. Please treat others how you would like to be treated. Take care.
Thank you.